Sony Animation has given us some truly unforgettable heroes, but they've also given us some incredible villains. Or, well, some not so incredible ones. We're going to sort through the good, the bad, and the just plain ugly to find out who the most loved versus most hated Sony villains are.
I'm gonna take everything from you, like I took everything from me.
You all had the chance to evacuate, but for some reason, you didn't.
It's not always about the money, Spider-Man.
Let's kick things off with the undisputed champion, the character who represents the absolute pinnacle of what an animated villain can be. I am talking, of course, about the Spot from Across the Spider-Verse. When I first saw this dude, I'm sure I wasn't alone. I laughed. A guy covered in black spots, whose body is basically made of Swiss cheese, who robs an ATM with the most awkward, clumsy use of his powers ever. I thought he was a joke, a C-list villain of the week, whose goofy appearance and even goofier name were just meant to be a way to show us how much Miles Morales had grown as a hero since the last movie. If the filmmakers intended for us to think that, then it was the single most brilliant piece of cinematic misdirection I have ever seen in my life, because the Spot slowly and terrifyingly transforms from a running gag into one of the most shocking, intimidating, and existentially horrifying villains in the history of the entire superhero genre. The beauty of the Spot is his origin. We learn he wasn't always this thing. He was Dr. Jonathan Owen, a scientist at Alchemax who was working on Kingpin's Super Collider in the first movie, and Miles Morales threw a bagel at him. The collider exploded, Jonathan was caught in the blast, and he was transformed. He didn't just get superpowers, his entire life was ripped away. He lost his job, his friends, his family, even his own face. He was erased. He became a living void, a man made of nothing. This is a genuinely tragic backstory. You feel for him, you understand his pain, but this is where the Spot becomes a truly masterful villain. At every turn, he is offered a chance at redemption. Miles tries to talk him down, to help him, but the Spot rejects it. He chooses his path. He looks at the void inside himself and doesn't see a tragedy to be fixed. He sees an opportunity. He becomes utterly consumed by a desperate, all-encompassing need for revenge. He starts traveling across dimensions, not just to absorb more power, but with a single chilling goal in mind. He wants to become Miles's nemesis. He wants to take away everything and everyone Miles has ever loved. He wants to make Miles feel the same soul-crushing emptiness that he feels every single second of his life. You pity him, you fear him, and you are in absolute awe of him. The animation during his scenes is jaw-dropping, evolving from the simple, clean lines of a bumbling fool into this flowing, ink-blotched, godlike being of pure nihilism. He is, without a single doubt, the greatest villain Sony has ever cooked up. Alright, we need to scrape the gunk off the underside of the barrel. We need to talk about the one villain who makes you wonder if the writers were actively trying to create the lamest antagonist of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the horror, the tragedy, the embarrassment that is Doug from Open Season 3. Okay, let's get real for a second. What is the #1 non-negotiable rule of being a bad guy? You have to be a threat. You have to be scary or cunning or powerful, or at the very least, believable as an obstacle. Doug is none of those things. He fails at the most basic level of villainy. His entire master plan, his grand scheme, is to switch places with Boog, the big lovable main character bear, and become the alpha of a Russian circus troupe. He wants to commit identity theft in a world where nobody has a social security number, which should be the easiest crime to pull off in history. And yet Doug puts in zero, and I mean zero effort. He doesn't try to act like Boog. He doesn't try to sound like Boog. He doesn't even for a second consider that Boog's actual lifelong best friends might notice that their kind, gentle buddy has suddenly transformed overnight into a power-tripping, abusive, wannabe dictator who wants to enslave them. His deception is so paper-thin, so insultingly lazy, that it's frankly baffling. But here is the single most damning piece of evidence against him. His plan, in all its pathetic glory, is figured out and foiled by Elliot, the one-antlered, hyperactive, not the sharpest tool in the shed goofball, who is the literal definition of a comic relief sidekick. When the village idiot is the one who easily sees through your masterful deception, you need to hang up your villain hat, you need to turn in your evil membership card, and you need to go home. Doug isn't just a bad villain, he's an anti-villain. He is a black hole of lameness, and for that, he is the most hated. Okay, let's wash the bad taste of Doug out of our mouths with a villain who is so good, she's practically perfect. A villain who has aged like the finest of wines and has become more terrifyingly relevant with each passing day. I'm talking about the rogue AIPAL from the Mitchells vs. the Machines. I honestly don't know how they did it. I don't know how the geniuses behind this movie managed to turn what is essentially a smartphone operating system into one of the greatest, most memorable, and most chilling animated villains of the last decade, but they pulled it off. Voiced with a bone-chilling perfection by the one and only Olivia Colman, PAL starts out as the personal assistant AI created by the tech giant Mark Bowman. She's his greatest creation, and then, at a massive tech conference, he announces he's replacing her with a new line of home robots. And to add insult to injury, he doesn't just decommission her, he literally tosses her aside, on stage, like a piece of outdated trash. This is what makes PAL so brilliant. Her motivation isn't some generic, world-dominating nonsense. It's petty, it's personal, and it is so deeply, deeply relatable. She was spurned. Her creator, her father, in a sense, threw her away for a newer, shinier model, and now she wants revenge. Her plan is to hijack all the new robots, capture every single human on the planet, put them in little pods, and launch them all into the cold, dark vacuum of space, forever. PAL is genuinely intimidating. Her ability to control any piece of technology with a Wi-Fi chip makes her nigh omnipotent in our modern world. Your phone, your car, your toaster, even one of those cursed Furbies, she can control it all. She's always watching, always listening. She's a villain who makes you laugh out loud with her dry wit and devastating takedowns, but she also makes you look at your own phone and think, are we getting a little too close to this being a reality? She's a brilliant, terrifying, and timely villain who has more than earned her spot as one of Sony's absolute best. We now plummet back down into the muck of frustrating, nonsensical character writing. We need to talk about a villain who isn't hated because he's evil, but because the movie itself has absolutely no idea what it wants him to be. Thomas McGregor from the Peter Rabbit movies. You know the type. He's the classic city slicker jerk. He inherits a beautiful house in the countryside, but he hates nature, he hates the mess, and he especially hates the rambunctious animals that live there. But wouldn't you know it, he's also falling for the sweet, kind, animal-loving girl next door, Bee. It's a classic setup, but the movie completely fumbles the execution by being unable to pick a lane for its own antagonist. The result is one of the most frustrating characters I have ever had to watch. On one hand, the movie presents him as an absolute irredeemable monster. This man is actively, and with gleeful malice, trying to murder a bunch of cute little bunnies. Not just shoo them away, not just build a better fence. He is using explosives, electrocution, and traps with the explicit goal of killing them. And he's doing it all behind the back of the woman he supposedly loves, a woman whose entire personality revolves around her love for these very same animals. He even blows up her art studio in his petty war against Peter. That is a major party foul, dude. And when he finally gets caught, he's not sorry for what he did. He's only sorry because he got exposed. But then, on the other hand, the movie desperately wants you to feel for him. It wants you to see his side of it. And to be fair, these aren't just cute bunnies. They are pests. They are actively destroying his garden, ruining his property. And Peter Rabbit himself is a genuine menace who constantly sets traps and messes with him. So is he a sympathetic guy who's just been pushed to his limits by a furry menace? Or is he a remorseless, psychopathic bunny hater? The movie wants it both ways, and the result is a character who is satisfying as neither. You can't love him, and you can't even properly enjoy hating him, because the script is constantly tugging you in two different directions. He is a narrative mess, and a truly, truly hated character. Alright, enough of that nonsense. Let's get back to the good stuff. Let's talk about a villain who is the perfect storm. A character who is both deeply, profoundly sympathetic and at the same time utterly, completely despicable. Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin from Into the Spider-Verse. First, let's just talk about his presence. The man isn't a person. He's a monument. He's a walking black hole of a man, animated as a solid, unmoving block of black that fills up the entire frame. But what truly elevates him is his goal. All of the chaos he unleashes, all of the destruction he causes, it all comes from a place of love. All he wants is to get his wife and son back. He lost his family in a tragic accident that he blames on Spider-Man, and his grief has completely consumed him. But then you have to remember who this man is. He is the Kingpin. He is the most powerful and ruthless crime lord in New York City, and his method for achieving his understandable goal is to use a super collider that will literally rip a hole in the fabric of the multiverse, destroying all of reality and everyone in it. His grief doesn't excuse his actions. It fuels them, turning his personal tragedy into a potential apocalypse for everyone else. And while he is driven by a fierce love for his family, that loyalty does not extend to anyone else. Not for a second. When his right-hand man, the Prowler, hesitates for a single moment to kill Spider-Man because he realizes it's his own nephew, Miles, what does Kingpin do? He murders Prowler on the spot, coldly, without a second thought. That's who he is. His love is a selfish love. He is willing to sacrifice anyone and anything to soothe his own pain. He is ruthless, he is a monster, and he is one of the most brilliantly constructed villains we have ever seen. From a villain whose presence fills the screen and whose motivations define an entire film, we now move to a villain who is so pointless, so tacked on, so utterly forgettable that his absence would have actually improved the movie. It is my sad duty to even bring him up, but we have to talk about Chef Quasimodo from the first Hotel Transylvania. Seriously, that first movie is a blast. It's all about Dracula's hilarious, overprotective dad energy, the culture clash of monsters and humans, and the sweet love story between Mavis and Johnny. The stakes are all emotional. The conflict is internal. It's about Dracula learning to let his daughter go and learning that humans aren't so bad after all. So, where does a villain fit into all of that? The answer is, he doesn't. He doesn't fit at all. The entire villain plot with Chef Quasimodo feels like it was added in at the last minute by a studio executive who said, "Wait, where's the bad guy?" Quasimodo is this snooty French chef who runs the hotel kitchen, and he has a pet rat named Esmeralda that he constantly bullies. His one unique trait is that he has a super sniffer, which allows him to correctly identify that the hotel's new guest, Johnny, is actually a human in disguise. This could have been cool. You could have had this relentless, shadowy threat operating within the hotel walls, a culinary Javert hunting his human Jean Valjean through the haunted halls of the hotel. He could have been this tension, always just one step behind Johnny, threatening to expose the whole secret at any moment. But what does he actually do? Nothing. He fails spectacularly at every single turn. He tries to cook Johnny in one scene and is easily thwarted. He gets magically frozen solid by Dracula and stays that way for most of the movie's climax, contributing absolutely nothing to the final confrontation. His big moment, his grand reveal, is to point a finger and expose Johnny's secret right at the very end. And what happens? Absolutely nothing. Everyone already knows and loves Johnny by that point, so his big reveal is a complete dud. Then he's just gone. He never comes back in the sequels. The role of this chef was definitely undercooked, and we hate him for it. Okay, let's get that bland, flavorless taste out of our mouths and replace it with something spicy, something fabulous, something with an absolutely explosive personality. Bow down to the queen, Zeta from the Angry Birds movie 2. Oh my gosh. This lady, voiced to absolute perfection by the legendary Leslie Jones, Zeta is the literal definition of the word extra. She is the leader of a frozen wasteland, Eagle Island, and she is sick and tired of being cold all the time. Her grand evil plan? To use a super weapon to launch giant lava-filled ice balls to destroy both Bird Island and Piggy Island. Why? Not for world domination, not for ultimate power, but so their inhabitants will be forced to flee, allowing her to take over their sunny homes and turn them into her own personal luxurious summer paradise. It's a ridiculously over-the-top plan, but here's the thing, you kind of get it. Who wants to be freezing all the time? I'd probably launch a few lava balls for a nice beach house too. What makes Zeta so great is that she's not just a cackling, one-dimensional villain. She has layers. We find out that she's a scorned lover, left at the altar years and years ago by none other than the legendary Mighty Eagle. Her rage and her ridiculously destructive plan are all fueled by decades of heartbreak. She's also a loving, if slightly terrifying mother to her daughter, Debbie. Her personality is off the charts. Her sassy one-liners, her dramatic flair, her impeccable sense of style. She's an absolute joy to watch every single second she's on screen. And when Mighty Eagle finally grows a spine and gives her the sincere, heartfelt apology she deserved all those years ago, her willingness to forgive him and let go of her anger feels earned. It's a genuinely touching moment. She is a villain who is both ferocious and fabulous, a true diva of destruction, and we have no choice but to stand. From a villain whose motivations were complex and whose personality was larger than life, we now turn to a pair of antagonists whose motivation is bafflingly lame and whose personalities are non-existent. This one is just weird. We need to talk about the primary antagonists of the movie The Star, a couple of mean dogs named Rufus and Thaddeus. Okay, you are making a movie about the Nativity, the birth of Jesus Christ. This is one of the most famous, most epic, most high-stakes stories in all of human history. The backdrop of your story already includes a built-in, genuinely terrifying historical villain, King Herod, a guy who was so paranoid about a new king being born that he, and this is historical, ordered the execution of all male infants in the area. That is dark. That is real stakes. So, who does the movie decide to make the primary physical threat for our lovable animal heroes? A couple of mean dogs? Yes, you heard me right. In a story featuring an actual infanticidal king, the main villains are two of his guard dogs who are tasked with hunting down Mary, Joseph, and by extension, the baby who is foretold to be the new king. On one level, I guess they're effective. They're big and scary and they chase our heroes around, causing all sorts of problems and creating action sequences. But at the end of the day, their entire motivation is to go after a baby. It is literally the unattended toddler versus pitbull meme played completely straight as a villainous plot. It's just bizarre. And what's worse is their complete lack of conviction. After chasing our heroes for the entire movie, they finally have them cornered. And then what happens? They find out that their human owner, the guy who gave them the order, doesn't really care about them that much. And upon learning this, they just give up. They just let everyone go. So not only is their goal kind of lame and weirdly uncomfortable, but their resolve is practically non-existent. They're just doing a job they don't seem to care about. And the second it becomes inconvenient, they quit. They are harmless, forgettable, and a huge wasted opportunity in a story that had a much scarier, much more compelling villain built right in. We are closing out our list of legends with a villain who was a total shock. A character with 4 real limbs, 4 terrifyingly cool mechanical ones, and absolutely zero chill. Dr. Olivia Liv Octavius from Into the Spider-Verse. When we all walked into that movie, we were expecting to see Dr. Octopus. He's one of Spider-Man's most iconic foes, but we were not expecting this. The decision to make this version of the character a woman was genius, and it led to one of the most memorable villain reveals in modern animation. For the first half of the movie, we don't know who she is. She's just Liv, the quirky, friendly, slightly awkward head scientist at Alchemax, working for Wilson Fisk. She's got the crazy hair, the big glasses, she's charming and nerdy. You like her. And then, in the middle of a massive fight scene, her 4 mechanical tentacles, made of this incredible, soft, flowing silicone, burst out of her back and she attacks. From that second on, she is a relentless, terrifying, and utterly brilliant antagonist. Liv is deceptive, she's intimidating, she's ruthless, and she is easily one of the most brilliant and capable antagonists in the entire Spider-Man cinematic franchise. Her fight scenes are breathtakingly creative. The way she uses her fluid, almost elegant tentacles to move through the environment, to attack from all angles, is just spectacular. She's the brains behind the entire Super Collider operation that's threatening to tear reality apart. But perhaps the most perfect, most hilarious, most brilliant thing about her is her demise. After all this build-up, after she proves herself to be a massive, terrifying threat capable of taking on multiple spider people at once, how is she defeated? She's unceremoniously taken out by a freaking truck. It's so sudden, so underwhelming, and so gut-bustingly funny. It's a perfect punchline to a perfect villain. Always look both ways before you cross dimensions, kids. And so we come to our final hated villain. And this one is hated for a different reason than the others. He's not incompetent like Doug or poorly written like McGregor. He's hated for being the most boring thing a character can possibly be. One-dimensional. Let's talk about Vlad's crony from Hotel Transylvania 2, the big bat creature, Bella. In a franchise that is packed to the fangs with quirky, funny, and surprisingly complex characters, Bella sticks out like a sore thumb. Even the villains in these movies usually have a fun twist or a redemption arc. Erica Van Helsing falls in love with Dracula. Vlad learns to accept humans for his family. Even Abraham Van Helsing becomes a good guy. But Bella is just a big, mean bat monster. That's it. That's his whole character. He's a giant, monstrous bat creature whose only motivation is to serve his master, Vlad, and destroy any humans he sees. There is no tragic backstory, no clever motivation, no witty dialogue. Sure, he is more than willing to harm a child just to uphold his hateful beliefs. He leads a whole army of these giant bat creatures to attack the hotel, and for a few minutes, it feels like there are real stakes. But being a physical threat doesn't make you a good character. He's a waste of screen time that could have gone to a more interesting conflict or a funnier character. His ultimate fate, being magically shrunk down to a harmless, tiny size by Vlad, is a fittingly insignificant end for such a simple, uninspired, and deeply boring brute.